All of you can hear me okay? Thank you. So the third speaker after lunch, I have 27 slides. How much time I have, Chami? 15 minutes. Okay, I'll reduce it to 24. This topic that is given to me is creating a model for value creation. Now, when I think about value creation, these are words that I've been hearing ever since I started my career 30 years ago. Strategy, digital transformation. All these are words that we are used to. Frankly speaking, I have no idea. So that's the reason why I think I'm more qualified. If you look at our current environment where we are operating, we all know it's extremely complex and it only becomes more and more complicated as we go along. There are three major trends that I could see at a very, very macro level that is impacting how businesses is run, how government is run, how everything is run for that matter. Number one is climate change. Number two is energy transition. We had a very good speaker who talked about it. And then finally, social inequality. So these things obviously affects how we live, how we run our business, and how we continue to, what we can think of creating some much better value creation as we go along in this journey. Now, to make things worse, what has happened in the last almost close to 10 years or so, a recent phenomena, some new thing that came into the entire industry. Everybody, it's just not a question of you getting measured in terms of your shareholder value or your profit and loss, your margins, your EBITDA, your market capitalization, etc. A new thing that's catching all of us across all industry is sustainability improvement. How are you doing as an organization with respect to sustainability? Now, this has made the equation even more difficult, which means we are talking about three P's: people, planet, and profit. I can't choose one, I can't choose two. I necessarily have no choice, have to run with all the three for me to be sustainable. And also, one of the recent trend, in fact, couple of years, at least in the IT industry where I'm coming from, we have started seeing an increasing trend where customers have started questioning us, not just to sign a contract with us. They are not just questioning the capability, whether it's available or not. They are questioning whether we have any practices that makes us sustainable on all these three things what we just talked about. And we are also forced to even partner with vendors who have similar thought process, which means we are basically narrowing down our choices and still have to manage all those bottom lines and top lines and everything that's part of the ecosystem. So with this context, what is the model we can create, particularly from a shared services perspective, to have sustainable value creation on the go all the time? And that is why I said I need at least 25 slides, but since I'm given, now I already eaten 5 minutes, I have another 15 minutes or so. I've decided not to use any slides. Okay? I should see some smile. Thank you. I can give you a lot of theory, run a lot of slides, but today I've decided not to run any slides. I think we're all smart enough, matured enough, experienced enough in terms of understanding, and we have our own ways of creating value. Value again means different things to different people. But I think at a high level, from a shared services perspective, at a very fundamental level, we keep talking about efficiency, cost arbitrage, return on investment, etc. But I think if you continue to talk these three languages, I think are at a very, very elementary level from a value creation lens perspective. Because this is given. We are not in 1990s, we are not in 1980s. That was the time when these things were talked about. That was the time when people were challenging, why do you need to set up shared services? What is the valuation that they're going to bring in? I think we have crossed the stage. The whole industry, the shared service industry has matured. And now we are talking about something different, something unique, something different that was not thought before. So I'll give you some examples on how we in shared services in Mindtree. Again, it's just to give you a little more context. Mindtree is about 22 years old now. I'm sure all of you know. It's been acquired by L&T. Actually speaking, we are going through integration process with L&T Infotech. So it's going to become a 40 plus 40 to 43,000. So it's going to be some 83,000 people as we speak. By the time I go home, I think it will probably cross 90,000. That's a kind of hiring that we do. I won't be surprised. And the projection is in a matter of less than 2 quarters, we will be touching 100,000, 1 lakh employees globally, which means more people means more problem. And that's why people in HR always have jobs, no matter what we do. And that's the reason I chose this profession. So I just want to spend few minutes, next 5-10 minutes on stories or things that we did in shared services that eventually started adding value. And this is something how will sustain, and that's how we created a value creation model from a shared service perspective in Mindtree. First and foremost, if you are a shared services professional, you are a process expert. Again, basic, without which you just can't exist. You can't breathe, you can't get your salary. Now, if you have that competency, why should you restrict it to only to your process? Only to your finance process, HR process, immigration process, procurement process, P2P, whatever, which is extremely internal looking. That is how people were in the 80s and 90s. If you are running something like this today, I think you got to think out of the box. You got to extend this competency of creating process and bringing in that efficiency outside the shared services organization. Which means I have created a bunch of process consultants in Mindtree, in shared services, that does process consulting for my delivery organization. Delivering technology solutions to customers. Do they know technology? Absolutely no. Zero on technology. They need not know technology. For me to understand process, I don't need to really know technology, because technology always follows process. Process is always the leader. And then comes the technology, which is basically a driver, a vehicle to reach that destination. So if this is the thought process, then we went ahead and created process champions that started consulting other groups so that we could lift them up. Why? For our own vested interest. A lot of times we realized after 3.5 to 4 years time, most of the most complex process had matured. But we are still not delivering efficiency to the organization as a whole. From a shared service perspective, we are delivering value. But if I have to look at it from a company perspective globally, that was not visible. Why? Because my stakeholders are lagging behind. I can't tell them in so many words. Because they are the ones who are giving me jobs. So it was a duty, it was more of mandatory force that helped us to think on those lines, to help them so that they also get little elevated, and then there's a better understanding, and then there's much more harmonized process that is running. So that is something that we implemented over the last 3.5 to 4 years. So every time we have some interesting transition happening, sometimes even little complex, even when it involves some work that is moving from a customer, if it is allowed in the contract, as long as all the confidentiality and the data privacy clauses are protected, I have my process consultants that will go sit there, help them, the delivery organization. Now, when my people go and sit there, what is happening? We are part and parcel of the revenue. We have a direct impact on how we can impact the top line, and of course the bottom line as well. So that is a new way of me demonstrating. When I say me, people in my team, demonstrating to the management that we are much more closer to the top line and bottom line. Not just showing you cost arbitrage at the end of the quarter or end of the year. That's one example. Second example is, we've been running our reports every month and we circulated. What happened? Nothing happened. because nobody could appreciate it. Nobody really could see through it. So it was, again, something that was forced on us, which made us think, how do we make sure that efficiency is articulated well enough for the organization to understand and have a deeper meaning? And when that happens, I don't have to even go sell myself, try to get the process into my organization. Now, we have come up with certain methodologies that directly, particularly in an IT services firm, it's a lot more easier. I don't know that I can speak for other organizations, but if you probably put on a thinking cap, I think it's definitely doable. We have now started measuring what is exactly our contribution to our EBITDA. What is exactly the contribution that we have made in increasing the margin by certain points. So that is one of the things that we started showcasing, and that started catching a lot of attention. So what I'm trying to say is, even in the way you articulate your metrics, your SLAs, your efficiency scores, I think don't stop there, do something more so that it catches the right attention and eventually helps you in bringing more work. Third one is, when we moved at a point where most of the process reached certain level of stability and people were doing a reasonably good job and the trainings were doing okay, we thought we should do something unique. Even the company had not thought about it. We thought about a unique inclusivity drive. Typically, when you look at inclusivity, diversity or inclusivity, most of the organizations think about giving more jobs to women, more jobs to people who are disabled, people who are below poverty line. That's typically the thought process. So we thought we should do something unique. We did two things. One of the things happened about actually last year. Something that we did about 4 years ago was, why can't we take this job to prison inmates in central prison and help those first-time offenders to transform their lives, instill hope, and help them learn something so that when they get released from the jail, they become productive citizens and they will be able to do some jobs. That was something that we thought. It took about 8 months for me to convince the management. It took less than 5 minutes for me to convince the police department. And we ended up setting up a processing center in Bangalore Central Prison. Hired first-time offenders, not rapists, not terrorists, people who are normal people like me, but in a fit of rage, in a moment of weakness, they did something stupid, because of which they got jailed. They were in prison. We picked up life convicts, not under trials, because you know what under trials go through in India. It goes on for lifetime. So we looked at convicts so that they are there, the job can be done. So that is something that we did. That garnered tremendous amount of attention. People never thought this is something that is possible. We were the first corporate, at least in India, to enter prison, and we can get out. A lot of people can enter, very few people can get out. And we have a center there. This also created a lot of buzz and energy within the organization. Second, last year what we did was, we offered jobs to transgenders. I have transgenders in my team, about 10 of them, and they're doing some fantastic jobs. Now, when the rest of the organization saw this, they said, why have we not done this? My HR had started thinking, why the hell we are not doing it outside child services? So this is a new thought that was seeded into the people's head, and now we are thinking of doing something across the organization, and this is like a testing water. And it's working well, so obviously we will extend this. So this is something that they picked as a best practice from child services. And that is how I say we create some value. Value need not be monetary. Need not be always monetary. There can be a lot of non-monetary value that we can create. The next one is, because we are a digital company, we keep talking about digital. We are an IT services firm. We think digital all the time. We were born at a time, and we were born digital as far as Mindtree is concerned in 1999. So all the work we do for the customer obviously is on the digital side. So the thought process was, why not for our own employees? Why only for customers? So about 5 years ago, I had about 180 RPA bots that was developed for internal processes. When everybody was talking in a forum like this and writing a blog, we went ahead and created bots. In fact, I was telling somebody before this session, during lunch, that I have RPA engineers part of my headcount. They are not part of different COEs who will be loaned to me when I have a requirement. That will never work because these guys are the hot targets. They get placed and they want to be billable so that they can generate revenue. We said nothing doing. If you are serious, if you are truly digital, and if you have to do this, and if you believe that whatever we can do to customers, we can do to employees, we have to have people inside shared services who can deliver such jobs. And that's the reason why for the last 3.5 years, I have a bunch of excellent RPA engineers. Of course, I have attrition there also, but that's a way of life in any IT company. The last one, with all this, what happened was, with our inclusivity drive, with the amount of automation that we've been doing, we call it digital insight, finally, it caught the attention of Harvard Business School. Because if you look at world class, the definition of world class, there are multiple definitions of world class. Right? One of the simplest definitions that I think that applies to all walks of life is there are two buckets. One is excellence. Another one is differentiator. If you have a good combination of these two, you are world class. Whether you are an individual or an institution, you are world class. So what comes under excellence? Your process efficiency, the best SLAs, the best cost, the lowest cost, and all those things that we typically look for when you think of creating value addition is what we put under this bucket called excellence. And that is an ongoing journey. You keep improving all the time. You try to improve what you did last month, last week, yesterday, and see how you can benchmark yourself and then become better again and again and again. So that is an ongoing journey. And then on the right-hand side, like I said, differentiator. What is the differentiator? What is it that you're doing that is different? Because if I only get obsessed with this side, this becomes replicatable. If I can do, anybody can do. If Mindtree can do, Infosys can do, Wipro can do, anybody can do. Not necessarily IT company, anybody can do. No rocket science. So that is when we thought we should have something unique. And that is the reason why we proudly launched our Digital Insight initiative, where we started creating more for bots. In fact, we have a slogan internally in Mindtree. We will taste the wine before it's served to the customer. We are in the business, not in the business of wine anyway. It's just a metaphor. So that's the thought process. So combination of these two, if you're able to grab the attention with your D&I and with some unique program that you can roll out, it need not be always a program that you have to roll out with prison inmates in Bangalore Central Prison. It can be anything else. And not necessarily only hiring transgenders. It's a question of how you define what your differentiator is. And then you have a combination of these two that will eventually create a long-lasting value. Not necessarily only monetary, but then a lot of non-monetary value creation as well. And that's something that is sustainable. And this is one of the reasons why I have the lowest attrition in shared services across other departments in Mindtree. Why? Because people think we are doing something unique, something different, and that obviously keeps them engaged. And that in a way is a byproduct. It was not something that was intended for this purpose, but it is a nice byproduct that we would all love to cherish. With that, my slides are over. Thank you very much. If there are any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, here.
Within your organization. So when you
Can you come again? Differentiator?
Differentiator, and then you spoke about digital insights.
Uh-huh.
So just wanted to understand a little more on that. Is it that you have done something within your Mindtree for people to use it?
You mean digital insight?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this is an unfair advantage because we are a IT services firm. The thought process is, like I said, whatever we can do to customers, we can do to Mindtree also. So we built a lot of ancillary and satellite applications revolving around our central application, whether it is, of course, SAP is our central HR database for finance as well as for HRMS. So that was something that was built several years ago, the last 16, 17 years. What we did was we built multiple applications around it and had a lot of interfaces between these two. That also enabled us to create good amount of data churning. Now what we did do next? We looked at the data that is getting churned in all the transaction system, whether it is R2R system or a P2P system or a invoice processing system or a HR system. Again, in HR, there are multiple subcategories, I'm sure. I don't want to get into the details. The idea was, when all these applications were creating multiple transactions and data, we then funneled all that into what we call as a data lake. Then from the data lake, I can use multiple business layers and presentation layers and carve out and slice and dice and present it in a way that is more palatable, that will help me decide what I have to do. Earlier, most of the meetings were based on hearsay, feel, and what somebody knew. So we moved from that culture into a data-based decision-making culture, which means we force the managers to use this particular analytics application and ask them to decide on anything based on the presentation layer that is available with them. And then that is when we created chatbots. Again, chatbots was something that we created 6 years ago. And that chatbot has already answered more than 5 lakh answers in the last 5+ years, more than that actually. And that is the reason why I told you we created multiple RPA bots for internal processes. So all this comes under this umbrella called digital insight, which means coming up with some digital solution for all internal processes running inside the company. And this was driven by shared services, because we are the ones who are handling process and we are the owners of the data. So, which means we are the most qualified people to develop the application and maintain it. I hope I answered the question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the presentation, it's very insightful. I was quite fascinated by the change that you got about taking transgenders in your team. So, I mean, they are being accepted by people around, and I don't know how many of them here have transgenders in their team. But then there is one set of people who are against them or who are not that favorable to them. So how challenging was it to you or your team to have them there and make them work, get the work done? And how were your other staff supportive or not supportive to the decision that you made?
One thing that happened by chance was this happened during the COVID, which means most of the time people are working from home. That was an advantage, right? So you can easily avoid some unnecessary stare and some dirty look, right? Or some gossips or some talking behind. So most of the time, almost everybody was working from home. So we thought this is the best time to get these people in because they're invisible, number one. But before we did that, obviously we did a lot of thinking on what we need to do, how we're going to do, because we don't want any of them to feel offended, because we want them to be treated exactly like how you and I are treated. That's the whole idea. So we sensitized our people. I made sure that all my entire staff undergo the module. We have a LGBTQ, PDQ online module that is available as part of our learning platform, and we made sure that everybody goes through that, and at the end there is a test. And then you have to get 100 out of 100, not 99 out of 100, 100 out of 100. And if you've not got 100 out of 100, redo it. Because it comes up with, randomized questions. The whole idea was to sensitize and make people serious about it. And that was extremely helpful. That's number one. Number two, we also have to make a lot of physical infrastructural changes. For example, you have to change our washrooms. We need to create a new washroom for them. So that was something that we partnered with our admin and facilities team and made them do in all our buildings. These were two major preparations, but the rest, once the sensitization happened, and then of course after that we had a lot of group meetings through the different team leads and also all hands, and we told them this is what is expected. We don't want anybody to even get an iota of doubt that they are being looked at slightly differently. That's not the idea. We want them to feel comfortable, accepted, welcomed. So I would say COVID, in a way, helped us significantly. But nowadays, in the last 5-6 months, people started working, coming to office. I don't see a huge problem. I've not come across anybody complaining, and I've not, in fact, actually people started appreciating because the performance is also very good. So it looks like people are gelling. But I would still say these are early days. I would wait for minimum 2 to 3 years. We've just completed a year. I would wait for at least 2 to 2.5 years for me to comfortably say that they are absolutely accepted. But it's a long journey. But it's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So one, I'm coming from Schneider Electric, procurement director. One thing, and I just want to know your thought on this, right? So recently we have, so we are doing this annual survey, right, which is like ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score survey. So this year we saw one change, right? HR came back with the results, and in that there were 3 columns: male this many, female this many, and this many people do not want to reveal their gender, right? So I'm not telling that they are neither male or female, but what I'm trying to tell you is they are not comfortable revealing their gender. Do you see any kind of change happening in your organization as well? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Again, the transgender that we hired opened up the eyes across the management. We now have started tweaking our applications. We were having only male and female as gender, and then we now have opened others as a category. And it is an individual's right whether to disclose the identity or not. Absolutely an individual's right. No company, no individual has the right to probe and question why. So that is something that we started tweaking, and then it also has multiple impacts across downstream applications, because this data flows into different applications. So you need to have applications because the reason I'm saying that is based on the central information that you host. When this feeds multiple applications, you'll have to make sure that you have tweakings that is run across. So that's something that we started doing. Another one is it's just not about gender. It's also about marital status. Again, it's again an individual's choice. So some of those things now we are just rethinking our policy. We made some minor amendments. Interestingly, now these are things that we are now discussing with our counterparts in LTI, L&T Infotech. But it's interesting. It's really a fascinating journey.